Welcome to the Geostrategic Podcast.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. Right now, in the Atlantic, a single oil tanker has triggered a global power confrontation. U.S. forces have just seized a Venezuelan tanker accused of breaking sanctions while a reported Russian naval escort was watching. The ship went dark, changed its name, even painted a Russian flag on its hull, and the U.S. still moved in. Military aircraft, Coast Guard cutters, and intelligence assets are now converging near European waters. This is no longer just about oil, it's about how far the U.S. is willing to go and how Russia will respond. Before we break down what really happened and what comes next, like the video, subscribe for real-time geopolitical analysis, and share this with anyone watching global security right now. And most importantly, drop your opinion in the comments. Was this a necessary enforcement of sanctions or a dangerous escalation with Russia? This story is unfolding fast, and your take matters.
Okay, let's unpack this. I mean, we're looking at a 2-week chase across the entire Atlantic,
Right.
and it all culminates in this high-stakes seizure that pushes right up against Russia's interests. And just to be clear, for everyone listening, our mission here is purely analytical. We're going to stick to the source material.
Exactly.
We want to dissect the geostrategic implications of this incredibly bold move. What does it tell us about the strategy, about the military assets they used?
We're reporting on what the sources say happened, not taking a side.
Precisely. Because this whole thing is about the precedent being set. When you commit this much hardware, this much time, chasing one ship for weeks, you're basically redrawing the map for sanctions enforcement.
So let's start there. The anatomy of the seizure. The target is a vessel called the Marinera,
And it's part of what the reports are calling Venezuela's shadow fleet.
which is basically what a bunch of ships moving sanctioned goods off the books.
That's a good way to put it. It's a floating, unregulated network designed to move oil and other goods completely outside of international law, specifically breaking U.S. sanctions.
Okay, so there's a clear legal justification here from the U.S. perspective.
Oh, absolutely. The U.S. European Command was very clear. They said the seizure was due to violations of U.S. sanctions, and they're tying it to a presidential proclamation.
Right.
One that targets vessels that, and this is the important part, threaten the security and stability of the Western Hemisphere.
So they're framing it not as an economic issue, but as a direct security threat.
And that's the key. That's what justifies this level of intervention, so far from the U.S. itself.
And the sources make it really clear this wasn't just some random opportunity. This was a long, dedicated operation.
It was a hunt, a relentless one. The timeline is, frankly, incredible.
So where does it start?
You have to go all the way back to August 1st, 2025. The vessel, which at the time was called the Bella 1, leaves Iran.
On its way to Venezuela.
Exactly. And the U.S. was already watching it. They knew where it was going.
And the chase itself kicks off in mid-December.
Yeah, December 17th. The U.S. Coast Guard makes a first attempt to seize it somewhere near South America, but it fails.
And that's when the ship just disappears.
That's when it went dark. And we should be clear, this isn't like flipping a light switch.
Right.
It means turning off its AIS transponder. For a huge tanker to do that and just vanish for 2 weeks across the Atlantic, that takes discipline. It probably means they had outside help.
It's basically a stealth tanker at that point.
It is. It creates a massive surveillance headache. How do you find one ship in the middle of an ocean when it doesn't want to be found?
The fact that the U.S. committed the resources to do it anyway, that says a lot.
It says everything. And sure enough, the tanker pops back up on the trackers on January 1st, 2026.
And by then, it's way up in the North Atlantic.
Way north. And by January 6th, the U.S. military has it locked down. They've got continuous surveillance on it about 500 miles off the coast of Ireland.
And that proximity to Europe is, well, it's a very big deal.
It is. And we need to pause here because one of the sources, citing 3 officials, points out something crucial. While all this is happening with the Marinera, U.S. forces are also trying to seize a second Venezuelan tanker simultaneously down in Latin American waters.
Wow. So this isn't just about one ship.
No. It's a coordinated global campaign. The U.S. is sending a message that the entire shadow fleet, the whole system, is now a military target.
Which brings us to the real drama here, the shadow game.
This is where it gets wild. The ship was empty when they finally got it, but before that, it started making some changes.
It changes its name from Bella 1 to the Marinera.
Right. But that's not the provocative part. The really audacious move was painting a Russian flag on its side.
Which is, I mean, what's the point of that? Is there any legal standing there?
Not really. It's pure psychological warfare. It's an apparent bid for Russian protection, as the sources put it.
So you're daring the U.S. forces to board a ship that looks like it belongs to another major power.
Exactly. You're trying to make them hesitate.
Yeah.
And it forces a huge question on the U.S. commanders.
Yeah.
Do you respect this painted-on flag, or do you call the bluff?
And we know what they chose.
They called the bluff. And that sends a massive signal.
And it had to, because this brings us directly to the Russia factor.
Right. Because reports started coming out, specifically from the Russian state news outlet RT.
What did they say?
Their source confirmed that, yes, the U.S. was trying to board the Marinera, while a Russian Navy escort had reportedly joined the vessel.
So there was a Russian warship watching?
In the vicinity, yes. That's what was reported. And that just changes the entire risk calculation.
It's no longer a sanctions mission. It's a potential military standoff.
A very direct one. The Department of Homeland Security is leading this, and suddenly they're in a near confrontation with a nuclear-armed state.
The pressure on the commanders on the scene must have been immense.
Unbelievable. Because moving in on a ship that's being shadowed by a Russian warship, that's a decision with, massive political consequences.
But they did it anyway.
They did. They intercepted the vessel despite the reported Russian escort. It showed the U.S. risk threshold for this has gone way up.
And it forces Russia to ask itself, is protecting this one Venezuelan tanker worth a direct clash with the U.S. military?
That's the question. And this isn't happening in a vacuum, right?
No, we have to remember the context. The U.S. has been focused on the Maduro regime for years.
A long time. I mean, U.S. forces went into Venezuela to seize Maduro himself. He's in New York now facing charges.
So the seizure of this tanker is really just the latest move on a much bigger chessboard.
It's the maritime front of a long, ongoing campaign.
A campaign that, as you said, required a huge operational footprint. This wasn't just one Coast Guard cutter.
Not even close. The final showdown happens as the ship is heading toward Scotland, or maybe the Shetland Islands. This is deep in the North Atlantic.
A long way from the Caribbean.
A very long way. And the assets they brought in tell you everything you need to know about how seriously they took this.
So let's break that down. What kind of hardware are we talking about?
We're talking about special operations aircraft. A U-28A was tracked in the area.
What does that do?
It's a specialized intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance plane. An ISR platform.
The eyes and ears.
Exactly. When you see a U-28A, you know it's a high-level coordinated operation. This was a joint mission backed by the most sophisticated intelligence gathering the U.S. has. This wasn't a traffic stop. It was a planned raid.
And there were other bigger planes, too.
Oh, yeah. P-8 Poseidon aircraft.
Sub-hunters.
Primarily, yes.
Yeah.
But they're also incredible for wide-area maritime surveillance. Plus, KC-135 refueling planes.
Which means they were planning to keep those surveillance aircraft in the air for a long, long time.
For extended operations, far from base. The whole package, the ISR, the surveillance, the refueling, that's what you deploy when you think you might run into a major competitor, not when you're just chasing an empty oil tanker.
And all of this was being staged from Europe?
That's right. Flight tracking showed these U.S. Special Ops planes flying out of a Scottish airport, Wick-John-O'Groats, and then heading north.
So they were using the UK as a forward base.
Which is where the diplomatic angle gets really fascinating.
And the UK's response to all this activity on their soil?
Complete silence. Downing Street refused to comment on the seizure or on the uses of British military bases by third parties.
So what does that silence tell you?
It tells you there's a complex game being played. The U.S. is running a high-risk mission that actually benefits its European allies by putting pressure on Russia. But those same allies want to stay officially out of it.
So they just look the other way.
It's quiet operational support, but public diplomatic distance. A classic move.
Okay, so let's try to synthesize all of this. What are the big geostrategic takeaways here? What does this deep dive really show us?
Well, I think if you connect all the dots, the Marinera incident reveals at least three fundamental things about how the U.S. is projecting power now.
Okay, what's the first one?
First, they are committed to enforcing sanctions globally. It's not limited to their backyard anymore. They'll use top-tier military assets, your U-28As and P-8s, to chase a single ship across an entire ocean. A sanctioned asset is vulnerable anywhere.
Okay, global reach. What's number two?
Second, they're going to challenge cloaking attempts. By moving in on the Marinera, even with that painted-on Russian flag, They've set a huge precedent. You can't just wave a flag of convenience and expect immunity anymore.
So that tactic is off the table now.
It makes it much harder, much riskier for the entire shadow fleet model.
And the third point, this seems like the most important one.
It is a willingness to risk direct confrontation. Going ahead with the seizure, even with a Russian warship reportedly watching, is a calibrated escalation. It's a signal to Russia, to Iran, that these sanctions aren't just paper, they will be backed up by military force.
And that changes the math for Russia completely.
It has to. Now they know that just sending a warship might not be enough to deter the U.S. It creates a whole new level of friction in the North Atlantic that has nothing to do with Venezuelan oil.
So when you're listening to this, the big takeaway isn't really about the oil that might have been on that tanker.
Not at all.
It's about the new lines the U.S. is drawing in the sand for global maritime enforcement. It's a message that they will follow a target anywhere, no matter how clever the evasion and no matter how high the risk. It's really a fundamental shift in the game. Okay, that was a crucial breakdown of the Marinera incident. Thank you, everyone, for listening or watching, and we invite you to listen to our other deep dives. If you found this discussion valuable, please like, share, and subscribe to the Geostrategic Podcast for more in-depth analysis on topics that shape our world. Stay informed, stay ahead, and stay tuned for the next episode.